Shalom, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Daily Bread, where we talk about this week's Torah portion, which is Parashat Vezot HaBraka. It is the 11th and final parasha of the book of Devarim and the final parasha of the Torah. So my message this year is called Moshe Blessed. We'll start off with the really the double entendre, the double meaning here of it being the end of the Torah. Because in the scriptures, a lot of times Moshe represents the literal Torah. And we see this in the writings of Paul, even in the New Testament, where he refers to the letter of the law as Moshe. And I think it's a valid comparison and model that we see there. Moshe now has gotten to a point where he's taken this incredible journey with the children of Israel. He's taken people out of Mitzrayim, along with people who were part of Israel and people who weren't, and delivered them and corrected them. He taught them the will of Elohim, and he suffered with them, and he chastised them, and brought them to this point where they can go into the promised land. And so let's start off with taking a look at Deuteronomy 33:2. And we'll just take a quick peek here. It says in 33:2, and he said, Yodewahe came from Mount Sinai and rose up from Seir unto them. He shined forth from Mount Paran, and he came with the 10,000s of saints from his right hand when a fiery law for them. Now the word law there is Torah. So, and the concept of fire is usually a pattern of testing. So he came out with testing instruction. And what's interesting about this verse that a person has to ask the question is, who are these 10,000s of saints? What is that about? Why is Yodewahe, it talks about him coming with this Torah and saints. And I think that the saints represent the people of the Torah. They represent all those people that are within the stories of the Torah who teach us, we see examples of who made the right choices and who was righteous and who wasn't. And these are what I believe are represented by the saints that come with Yodewahe. Yodewahe is, how do we know Yodewahe? We know Yodewahe because of his Torah. It shows his will and his character, because it's a reflection of what he believes is right and wrong. And so it's very interesting that we see that these people, these great people of the Torah, are coming with Yodewahe through this Torah to teach us these lessons. And let's take a look real quick at verse 4, because in verse 4, we're going to see an interesting thing that really, it says, Moshe commanded us a law, even the inheritance of the congregation of Yaakov. So now here, we've already assessed that Yodewahe, the Torah represents Yodewahe. And here it says that the law or the Torah is the inheritance of the congregation of Yaakov. This is very interesting because we see a model within a model. We see that Israel, when they're among the nations, are righteous. They represent the will of Yodewahe on the earth, and they're a blessing to them, but also cursing if the people are disobeying. And they are righteous among the nations. Then you see this pattern, and Yodewahe is their inheritance. And then you see the other pattern that this reminds me of, which is the Levi'im, which they were the righteous ones among Israel, and it says Yodewahe was their inheritance, and they were also the ones who taught the Torah to the rest of the people and spread it out. So they were this light among Israel. Israel's this light among the nations, all tied to the Torah. So next we get into the blessings of the tribes, and an interesting thing about the blessings of the tribes is each blessing is a little bit different. Well, we've learned from the Torah that obedience to the Torah is the blessing, and disobedience is the cursing. So, the question a person could ask themselves is, are these different blessings for different types of obedience? How do we know who's in the tribe of Asher and who's in Zebulun? I would say if we had to pick from the text, besides just the physical descendants, I think we see something else here. I think that it's possible, just like the churches in Revelations, where it describes groups of people in accordance to what they did, how they either did certain things, and that was one group or church, and obeyed. In other areas, they disobeyed. And this is how they were known. So it's an interesting hypothesis to see that it's possible that the different tribes will be determined based on how they respond to obedience to the Torah, or maybe even if it's genetically that certain tribes are going to exemplify certain parts of the Torah, just like certain parts of the body have certain characteristics and distinctions from other parts of the body. So that's one for you to ponder. The next thing that we'll look at is Deuteronomy 34:4, which is interesting on multiple levels. It says, "And Yodewah said unto him, This is the land which I swore unto Abraham, unto Yitzhak, and Yaakov, saying, I will give it unto your seed. I have caused you to see it with your eyes, but you shall not go over there." So if Moshe represents the literal Torah, what is this telling us? That the literal Torah is not going to go into take the people into the promised land. It's going to take them from wherever they were, whether they were an Israelite born or a stranger, and bring them up to a point where they can go into the promised land, where Yahushua will take over and take them. So it's exactly what it says in the New Testament, where Shaul says that Moshe was the schoolmaster who brought us to Mashiach, just as the law brought us to Mashiach, which represents the spirit, and one was the letter. It's very interesting. So a person could also understand this too, that if you understand what Pardes is, which Peshat, Ramez, Darash, and Soda, understanding that there's 4 levels of understanding the Torah. One is literal, the Peshat, the very first, and the next ones are deeper or spiritual, they're the unseen things. Well, it's very interesting. We have Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Here we have a division between the spiritual things and going into the kingdom, and the letter of the law, and the literal and the physical things, which are represented by Moshe and the children of Israel in the wilderness. So one's spiritual, one's physical. And I tend to think that Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov are representations of 3 of those 4 levels, the 3 spiritual levels, and Moshe represents the literal level here. And Moshe is allowed to go up to it, but not go into it, because entering into the land is a spiritual thing. And that is why it's a promise to Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. So let's move forward and take a look at Moshe. Well, then what is the role of the written Torah? A lot of people think it might be diminished. We don't have to keep all of it. That was for then. This is for now. Well, we can take a look and see through this Parasha things about Moshe, and we can apply those things to the letter of the law also. It says in Deuteronomy 34:7, "And Moshe was 120 years old when he died. His eye was not dim, nor his natural force abated." So what you see is there's no diminishing of Moshe all the way up through 120 years until he died. He wasn't diminished at all. He was in full strength. And I think that shows us that the Torah is going to be absolutely in full strength all the way up until we go into the kingdom. It's interesting because he also fulfilled all of the days. We get another witness of this in Genesis 6:3. It says, "Yodewah said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for he also has flesh." So we have a flesh and a spiritual model here. "Yet his days shall be 120 years. So all of the days were fulfilled, that the letter of the law, the flesh, was with Moshe. Now we take a look at Matthew 5:17. It says, "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For truly I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle, and shall no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled. Whosoever therefore shall break one of the least commandments, and shall teach others to do so, shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say unto you, that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall in no case enter the kingdom." So here's a concept about entering the kingdom, about how long the law is enforced. It's enforced all the way up to, and it has to do with whether or not you enter the kingdom or not. It was played a vital role. Next, we'll look at Deuteronomy 34:10. It says, "And there arose not a prophet since Israel like unto Moshe, whom Yodewah knew face to face." So the face is a model of judgment. So in a sense, it's saying a prophet is someone who brings the word of God, and it's saying that Moshe, who represents the literal Torah, that there's nothing that has come along like the written Torah to teach us the judgment of Yodewah. That means the Mishnah, the Talmud, the New Testament even, none of those compare to teaching us the judgment of Yorewahe like the Torah does. I hope this has been a blessing, and until next time, I say shalom.